Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel right here on thewatchbox.com. I'd really appreciate it, and I'd be able to deliver my best to your inbox every day. If you enjoy our watches, well, they're for sale on thewatchbox.com, the internet's largest single-source repository of late-model pre-owned luxury watches and vintage timepieces. Buy, trade, sell, see full boxes, papers, details, high-res images, and pricing details for all of our timepieces on thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing Glashutte Original's brief foray into the sports watch field. From the mid-2000s to the late 2000s, the sport evolutions and sport evolutions impact were thoughtful, distinctive, well-made, and useful luxury watches with a sporting intent and yet no follow-up, as, in my opinion, Glashutte Original tried too hard to chase Lange. But the oldest continuously operating watch brand in Saxony did right by its trial attempt in the dive watch class, and you'll note it wears easy on my 16cm circumference wrist. Handsome and nicely proportioned, it's a 42mm diameter timepiece from 9 to 3, not including crown or crown guard. Relatively thin for a sports watch, 13.8mm means it may fit underneath a dress sleeve, but it'll definitely fit underneath a jacket cuff. Lug-to-lug, it's 52mm across the wrist, but you can see that when I have it sized down, it's securely planted on my wrist. Thanks to the curvature of the case back, the tight downward thrust of those lugs ensures that it arcs down around the wrist and it sort of plants itself. A bit like a Richard Mille, which has some arc or camber or curvature to it. You have that with this watch to help keep it planted. Moreover, you'll note that the end links are pivoted, so they don't project beyond the lugs. So 52mm lug-to-lug is the distance across the wrist with the bracelet. The bracelet is a nicely made piece. As you can see, it's distinctive in its style. One might even say a little bit idiosyncratic, but Gio wanted to do something different from the Rolex Oyster, and it achieved that. You can see the taper of the satin finished portion as it moves out from the bezel and then runs along the top centers of the bracelet. Polished outboard on the shoulders and the flanks, satin finish down the center. You'll note that there is actually an intermediate profile between the larger swells of the bracelet links, and the construction of the bracelet is incredibly complex to create a seamless look, so there's really no daylight shining through. It is very silky, and as you'll note, it's actually double pivoted at each individual link. So though the links are large, there's a lot of flexibility engineered into this seamless interlocking bracelet. You can see on the underside, it does have a little bit of a channeling between the links to avoid pinching skin or pulling hair. In practice, I prefer to see a bit more, but in experience, I found that this is one of the most comfortable bracelets you'll encounter. I don't understand how it avoids pinching skin or pulling hair. I just know that it works. German engineering, thumbs up. You'll also note that the clasp is substantial. In diving fashion, it's big, it's burly, it's milled out, and you do have to open it by squeezing two triggers. The mechanism is complex in that you have the triggers with their spring-loaded action, and then you can see underneath there is an incremental slider. You depress the logo on the clasp, and now you can take a large amount of slack to put it over some sort of dive suit or underwater thermal protection, or you can make small sizing changes to deal with the ebb and flow of wrist size through periods of activity, inactivity, hot or cold. And you'll note Patek, all of the links are sizable, and sizable with screws, not pins and sleeves. The end link profile is nicely conformed to the shoulder of the lugs, and we'll focus in now that the watch isn't on the wrist. You can see the lugs are set apart rather more dramatically from the case flank than you'll see on something like a Seamaster, a Super Ocean Heritage, or any of the Rolex divers. By creating a more distinct sculptural form for the lugs, Glashutte Original was looking to create a more distinctive dive watch that wasn't just a copycat clone of the usual suspects. And it is handsome, with a swell along the lug flank, the shoulder being polished with an expanding bevel rather than the other way around. Uncommon, but handsome. You'll also note that there's satin finish about the flanks of the case, and a little bit of a polish about the knurling of the bezel. The bezel is handsome. It has a rounded or domed profile that nicely matches the swell of the sapphire. It has a positive action and an audible detent with a luminescent pearl that you can line up with the minute hand. Now you've got an impromptu count up 60-minute, infinitely configurable, linear, or I should say circular, chronograph scale. So it's essentially a hand tracing 60 minutes of chronograph timing. If you've ever used a chronograph but had to look once, twice, 3 times to actually see what the minute register says, get a dive bezel. It's simply easier to use, more practical. You can time intervals up to an hour that are rarely featured on chronograph minute registers that are generally 30 minutes. Plus, you'll never have to pay the downstream service costs of a mechanical chronograph, and you can use the bezel for just about anything, submarine or surface. Beautiful dial. Geo nailed it on the first try. It's a handsome tritone of silver, red, and black with a matte black dial base that resists glare. Thoughtful details like the stepped faceting of the Panorama date for a more gradual transition from the plane of the dial base to the date discs themselves. You'll also note that there's a little bit of a Rayhaut or a chaptering outboard that provides a visual slope down from the bezel to the dial base, unifying the two forms. All of the indices are high polished and hand applied, and you'll note that shocks of red are used to punctuate the otherwise stolid and Teutonic aesthetic with just a bit of color and character. It's a handsome look, and with the Panorama date, it's also an unconventional one. Now, moving over to the crown guards, these two are unconventional. You'll note that they're fixed by screws, and they have a handsome faceted geometric look about them. Plenty of recess for the crown. This is one of the most comprehensively protected crowns I've ever seen without a full guard like you'll see on a Panorama Luminor. These are some of the deepest shouldered crown guards I've ever encountered. Now, the crown is a screw down, 200 meters water resistant. The watch has a number of features such as a quick set for the date and hacking or stop seconds, so you can synchronize the watch to a known accurate reference time. On the case back, caliber GUB 39. We may as well get as close as we can and focus in. It's a handsome movement. And it is a manufacturer movement built in-house by Geo. Automatic winding, 28,800 vibration per hour beat rate, 40-hour power reserve, 40 to 42 according to Geo. You can see a number of elements that are distinctive. First, you're not going to get a display case back on a Rolex diver. Second, you'll note the black polished swan's neck fine adjustment mechanism and the spectacular double spiraled reduction wheel for the winding system, as well as a 3/4 style bridge architecture to remind you that yes, we're making watches in Germany here. Handsome, tough, versatile, and made in-house. It's a lot of movement, but then again, this is a lot of watch. Unusual, and sadly so, because Geo nailed the sport evolutions. It would have been nice to see how this collection would have evolved over time. Unfortunately, it's a moment in time and not a continuity. Fortunately, watches are forever, and this one can live forever on your wrist. See it and make it yours on the Watchbox. Glashutte Original Sport Evolution Panorama date. A true diver. You can see the 4 corners, the dive bezel, hours and minutes. See the rest of it by the light of day on the Watchbox.